Before I begin this video, I have two announcements for you. Announcement number one, I am hoping to host a Q&A sometime next week. I know I made a video about this on Thursday night, but I have made several videos since then, so it's probably gotten lost. So if you want to submit questions, you can do it either in the comment section of that video or this video. I'll be handpicking questions, and I'll be answering as many of them as I possibly can. Not all of them, but some of them. More details in the Q&A video. Announcement number two. I now have a Wattpad account. I finally managed to figure out how to use Wattpad, and I'm so happy that I did because they're a lot more of an open-minded site than fanfiction, yet easier to use than Archive of Our Own. Not only can you write fanfictions and your own personal stories on Wattpad and get them posted on there, but you can also write messages to your followers letting them know what is going on. This is going to probably be a social media tool that I use, so I will be linking my personal Wattpad profile in the description of this video, if I remember. So if you like, go ahead and follow me on there. If you guys want a good first prize X-Reader fanfiction, I just posted chapter 1 of a fanfiction called For All Eternity. So if you want to check that out, please do. That'll be right on my profile page. Thank you. Alright, you guys, welcome back to my channel. It is Aria. Finally, I know you guys have been kind of waiting for me to come back and do a video, and this one is a very important one. This one is going to be one that I may or may not send to some family members, so I'm going to try not to use any cuss words or bad language at all, because I'm sick and tired of explaining this to a whole bunch of people. I want to tell you about how I found my real name. I was given a name at my birth, obviously, and it actually is a name that has appeared on this channel, and I have mentioned it several times. It's Rowan, but I wanted to tell you how I got from Rowan to Aria, and why I more identify with the name Aria. Now, I do accept people calling me Rowan because there are several who are used to calling me that name. My grandmother still calls me that name, even though I have told her that I more identify with the name Aria, because she's just done it all of her life, so it's a lot easier for her to call me by that name. My friend Blue Zebra and my partner, however, it's a lot easier to get them to call me by the new name, A, because they haven't known me as long and as personally, and B, because they know me personally enough to where they understand that this is important for me. I have always hated my name. I have always despised it. I started off when I was really, really little, and people would call me Roro, and they would say things like, they would start singing the very famous song that has those two words in it. They tell you to sing it when you wash your hands. I have grown to hate that song, because every single time I heard that song, I associated it with people making fun of the name I had. Additionally, another song I would always hear is Rollin', 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 and that is, or Rollin' Down the River, and that is because I would commonly get called Rollin' instead of Rowan. And you have no idea how much that just absolutely pissed me off. Even as young as 4 years old, I never liked that. And so I came to understand that I just didn't really like my name. But it wasn't something that majorly hit me because I was a very not self-aware 4-year-old child. A couple years later, my grandmother was talking to a family member about making doctor's appointments for me, and how everyone constantly asks, "Oh, so when is he coming in?" My name has been gender confused for a very long time. I am a very feminine person. I do not wear makeup at all. I think it is absolutely disgusting. I hate it. I could never do it. But I wear dresses. A lot of dresses. Some of them are a little bit weird. You may have seen them. I can't remember if my dress videos are still public or not, but You may have seen them if you watched them. And so you know that I prefer to dress very femininely, so getting confused with a male was just something I was uncomfortable with, because I have always been very uncomfortable with men anyway, which is why, ironically enough, my two main head partners are men, because they are men that I can feel comfortable with, and they aren't men in the real world that I'm going to distrust. So, getting my name made fun of and getting confused with the male gender were two things that just really made me hate my name. Then I found out how I actually got my name, how my father came up with this name. I believe Ari told you in his video, if you watched it, that I have several issues with my father. He is not the best person. He has not been the kindest to me. And one of these issues actually is the fact that he named me after a book character. When I was a little kid, I will tell you something very, very embarrassing. When I was into Invader Zim, I said that if I ever had a son, I would name him Zim. And that was the weirdest decision of my life when I was a kid, and I'm not going to be having children now. And so I, don't need to worry about that, but even if I was, I would not name my child Zim, nor would I name him First Prize. So, getting named after a character in a book is a little interesting. And that's going to be really ironic when I tell you how I found the current name I prefer. I would love to legally change my name, but because so many in my family know me by that name, I just honestly can't. Like, it's just not honestly possible. Which sucks, because I hate my legal name. I hate it so much. So, when my dad was coming up with my name, he had been a very big fan of the book series, The Witching Hour. I am not sure if you have ever heard of this book series before, but it's by Anne Rice. So, knowing that it is a very gothic book, I have personally never read it, and I personally do not plan to read it. My dad named me this because the character of Rowan, this female character, was a scientist, and she was very intelligent, and my dad, at the time, before my birth, had very high expectations of me, because we did not know until after my birth that I would have a disability, and all of his expectations came crashing down. I feel bad for my poor brother, too, because he's named after a character in The Legend of Zelda, which I think is even worse, because it's not even a good character. It's, I think, the main villain in Legend of Zelda. I won't give his name for personal reasons, but if you know anything about Legend of Zelda, you probably know that name. So, I, by the age of 12, had grown a very, very much of a distaste for my name, to the point that when I had my full-fledged Invader Zim escape world going on, I developed the idea of having a different name. And when I did, I fell in love with that idea. I gave myself the name Nawar because I had this idea that the Urkin language was everything in English, but backwards, because the Urkins seem to have a lot of opposites to humans, where snacks are really bad for humans and good food is really good for humans. Healthy food for humans is considered bad for Urkins, and snacks are like a vegetable. A Kit Kat is equivalent to a green bean for an Urkin. Not to mention, humans do not burn in water. Urkins do. Urkins can survive through fires. Humans cannot. So this made logical sense for me. So when I was fully invested in Invader Zim, when I wanted to be part of the Urkin Empire, I decided to give myself the name Nawar because I wanted to have a reverse name. So that's how that name came into play. I never made anyone call me by that name because secretly I knew that wasn't the right name for me. And so I just let people continue to call me Rowan, and I hated it so much. Because whenever people would use that name for me, it was mostly special ed people talking to me in a very demeaning way. and trying to get me to do something that I didn't want to do. And you're probably curious, well, if you were always demeaned by special ed people, why is First Prize a special educator in your headspace or in your escape world? And that is because he is the ideal special ed teacher, not just for me, but for anyone who needs one. Come 9th grade, I am looking for books to read so that I can take tests on them for English, and I come across the series The Inheritance Cycle. Let's forget the fact that I fell in love with the series entirely and was very disappointed by the movie. I love the character development, I love the dynamic, and I love the high fantasy writing. It is just amazing. And then I found out the creator is really egotistical, and it kind of almost ruined it for me. But we're going to focus on one of the main characters, because this was the first time I had ever heard the name Arya. Arya was an elf in the Inheritance Cycle. No, we're not talking about Game of Thrones. Get out of here! Sorry, she just always gets confused, and Anyway, she was a black-haired, angelic elf. And at first we thought she was going to be this dainty little Snow White princess, but no, she is an absolute badass. She is a warrior elven princess, and eventually, spoiler alert, she becomes a dragon rider, one of the most sacred people within that world. I fell in love with not only her character, but also the idea of being like her. I wanted to be strong, and in the words of Larry Cullen, I wanted to be strong enough to be gentle. So, with this in mind, the name Arya always stuck with me. When I was taking my college orientation in junior year, I was driving with somebody in a golf cart to get from one building to the other. She mentioned her daughter, and I asked her name. She said her name was Arya, and I asked where the name came from, and that's how I found out about the Arya from Game of Thrones. I'm sure she's awesome. In fact, I have heard that she's awesome, but I have not watched Game of Thrones, nor have I read any of the books, and honestly, it sounds a little bit confusing, so I don't know. I don't know. I'm into Baldi's Basics right now, and I'm not limiting myself, I don't know that I necessarily have the time. So, I kind of dropped the idea of the name Arya for a few years until I met my partner. Without going into any details, she inspired me to finally realize that I didn't like my name, and that I wanted and needed a change. So what did we do? We sat down for a long time and came up with names, and I had heard another name that I really, really liked. And if you watched Aries' video about what happened to Starscream, then you have heard this name before. The name was Starbella. I heard that name in Wander Over Yonder. Darren Norris sings an amazing song about her, and I wish I could find it, but I can't. But I really loved the name Starbella. I thought it was beautiful, and the name literally translated to beautiful star, so at the time when I was really into TFP and first looking at the idea of a different name, this name was the obvious choice for me. Through circumstances I don't feel like particularly getting into, that name became less associated with me and more associated with a person that I did not want to be. So I went ahead and changed the name again. And after hours of deliberation and sitting in CAS changing my character name in The Sims 4, we finally decided on the name Arya. And that is the name that I prefer to go by to this day. It just clicks with me. Ever since that day in 9th grade when I first heard the name, I thought, this name is beautiful. Not to mention that in Italian, at least I believe it's in Italian, Aria is the definition of a solo in an opera, usually performed by a soprano female. I am a soprano female. I sing genuinely in soprano if I'm doing opera singing, but if I'm doing any type of pop singing, then my voice can have a variety of ranges as far as singing. Like, I I could actually even sing in Aries voice. Like, it's amazing how much my voice has progressed now that I've allowed it to. So, the Aria, I didn't want that name to mean that I was just a solo person, loner, all on my own. I wanted that name to mean that I could stand on my own. I love the people I have in my life. I don't know what I would do without them, but I have a belief that I can stand on my own and be strong for myself, and maybe one day be strong for others. And that's why I decided to restart my mental health section of this channel. Will I continue to make ASMR content? Absolutely. And hopefully you'll see some next week, provided nothing else drastically horrible happens. But this is my dream. I'm not only doing ASMR content, but I'm also giving you guys some just mental health education based on my personal experience with escapism. And I hope you guys can take away that I love and care about each and every one of you, which is why my new motto is, program yourself to desire your own image. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.